I don't think I'll be surprising any of you when I say that modern politics has become a smokescreen for globalist left-wing ideologues on the one side and neoliberal economic overlords on the other. The genuine difference in outlook between the Tory party and the Labour party is increasingly scant, hence the term uni-party to describe them both. Now, these minor differences are overemphasised, especially in the left-wing media, so a load of liberals who are still listening to Jefferson Airplane and Jimi Hendrix can still pretend they're fighting the system, man. Yet when you look at the really big issues of our time, things such as the LGBTQ agenda, mass immigration, identity and belonging, a liberal worldview, the Labour Party and the Tory party broadly agree on every single one. This is why it's so obvious with regards to sellouts like Rees Mogg and what they've been trying to do recently.
So there were really severe limitations on what we could do until 2020. Now, that's when we make our big mistake. And the big mistake is a COVID-related mistake, that it is thought after COVID that the UK employment market is so fractured that we need mass migration. And so for 2 years, from 22 to 24, 21 to 23, I suppose, we have very, very high levels of migration.
Now, for anybody who's been interested in politics for 2 minutes, they'll be completely aware that Mogg here is trying to regain his conservative credentials to try and win back voters from reform. But the nerve of this guy to think that we'd believe that he didn't have any choice before 2020 to try and limit mass migration, given that that's what the people have been asking for about 20 years. Second to that he states his thinking, if he's telling the truth, which he's probably not, was more about the economy rather than the state of the country, tells us exactly why the public wanted to destroy the Tory party anyway. In essence, most politicians think we're just idiots who can't think for ourselves. The same is true of the media class. Just look at this stupid headline. David Lammy, of all people, is apparently going to visit Israel to prevent all-out war in the Middle East. Now, firstly, what on earth is David Lammy, that famous political strategist, going to go out there and do? And secondly, more importantly, anybody with a basic knowledge of geopolitics knows that Britain doesn't have that kind of muscle anymore. I mean, if Lammy went over there and tried to tell Netanyahu what to do, Netanyahu would say the next time he tries that, he'll be lucky to go back to London with his knackers intact. After all, we all know the real power in the region is that America backs Israel and always has. Now, quite why America does this is probably beyond the scope of what YouTube will allow you to talk about, but this is the way geopolitics is. The idea that David Lammy can have any influence over there is completely absurd. But the reason organisations like LBC and the mainstream media report things like this is because they want you to think that we actually have an influence in geopolitics, that it's real somehow, that our political decisions fundamentally will impact the broader world. The harsh reality here is that democracy doesn't really exist fundamentally. Yes, we're allowed to squabble over tax rates and elements of social justice. You're even allowed an authoritarian government which cracks down on your speech. But you cannot question the overarching rule of liberalism both in economics and our social lives. After all, remember Liz Truss? Now, I'm not a massive fan of hers, and like her or loathe her, the reality was she wasn't ousted by the public, she was ousted by the Bank of England, the arm of the globalist banking system. So whatever Rees Mogg says, we're going to get mass immigration whether we want it or not. The globalist order is changing the Western world fundamentally across the board, and it's that we have to be prepared for in the future. As I've said in prior videos, we really have to see this as a chance for a rebirth, a new beginning, rather than a negative thing. It's the only way forward in my view. These are just my thoughts, however. Do let me know what you think down below, and do consider subscribing to the channel.